Hello everyone, this is your trainer Abdul. In this short video, I'm going to help you understand the purpose of IP default network command in Eigrp. Before understanding with this command, we should understand what is the traditional behavior of a router. In this diagram, if you look at this, we have R1, R2, R3 and R4 connected in Eigrp, whereas your R1 is connected to the ISP. Let's say we have a user connected on R1. This user types www.google.com. The packet comes to the R1. Now R1 will check the destination address. If the destination address is listed in the routing table, the packet will be forwarded. But if the destination address is not listed in the routing table, by default your R1 router will drop that packet. It means that whenever a router receives a request for unknown destination, it is going to drop the packet. But if you look at this diagram, your R1 is connected to ISP. So basically it may happen that the user is trying to access a service that is in the internet. So what R1 should do is, whenever it receives a packet for unknown destination, he should forward that packet to ISP. This is what exactly your IP default network command does in Eigrp. Using IP default network command, we are going to tell R1 that whenever you receive a packet for unknown destination, do not drop that packet. Instead, forward the request to the ISP. Maybe a user is trying to access a service that is there in the ISP. So IP default network command helps R1 to forward the packet for any unknown destination towards your ISP router. So before starting with this command, I'm going to let you know what configurations we have done on our router. In our topology, I have just configured the IP addresses for all the routers, and I have few loopback interfaces configured on the ISP, assuming that 4.4.4.4 is for google.com, 5.5.5.5 is for Yahoo, and 6.6.6.6 is for your gmail.com. Now these are not the real IP addresses in the internet. I'm just using this IP addresses for the topology purpose. So let me get you the configurations for the ISP router. In ISP router, if I type show IP in brief, I just have the IP addresses assigned. I'm not running any routing protocol. Just to make you sure, I've just typed the command show IP protocol and it came up blank. But I want that ISP router, whenever it receives any packet, it should reply back those packets towards R1. So for ISP, I'm just going to go ahead and configure a default route so that it should send a packet back to R1. So IP route 0.0.0.0, 0.0.0.0, your next hop will be 1.1.1.1, that is our R1 router. Now this command is not used in the real time. We are just using it for the lab purpose, so that ISP should reply back to us for any request or any query packet that we are sending towards the ISP. It should reply towards R1. So let me get you the console for the R1. Show IP protocol. That's it. I have no protocol configured, but I have my interfaces assigned with the IP addresses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and configure Eigrp on R1, R2, R3 and R4. Remember, this link we won't advertise right now in Eigrp. So here's the console for R1, and here we are starting with the configurations. I'll go to global config mode. I'll type router Eigrp 100. I'll just use the traditional way we advertise routes in Eigrp, followed by the network command and the default network of 10.0.0.0. Let me get the console for R2. I'll type show IP protocol. It's blank. Show IP interface brief. I have my IP addresses configured. So let me go to global config mode. I'll type router Eigrp 100. I'll type network 10.0.0.0. And now I'll go to my R3 router. Show IP protocol is blank. Show IP interface brief. I have my interfaces assigned with the IP addresses. Let me go to global config mode, router Eigrp 100, network 10.0.0.0. It should form the neighborship. Yep, pretty good. Let me go to R4 router, global config mode, router Eigrp 100, followed by network command 10.0.0.0, and the neighborship came up. Everything is working fine. Just to cross verify, let me go on the R1. From R1, I should be able to ping to the IP address of R4 router. 10.1.4.4. This is the IP that I've assigned for R4 router. It's reachable. So if I type show IP route, I have everything that is there in my autonomous system, but R1 cannot communicate with the IP addresses that are there in the server, in the internet. Let us just type ping 5.5.5.5, assuming we are pinging the yahoo.com. But as you can see, your by default R1 will drop the packet for any unknown destination. So what I need is R1 should not drop this packet, and instead it should send this packet towards ISP. To make this work, what I need to do is first let me show you show IP route. I don't have any network. I don't have any path defined for these ISP's router that are 4.4.4.4, 5 and 6 network. I don't have any routing path for those networks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to global config mode and type IP default network 1.0.0.0. I'm saying R1 that this is the default network for you. If you receive any packets for unknown destination, forward on this network. And then I need to define where exactly this network is located. And for this I need to type the static route command. IP route 1.0.0.0, my default network, which has subnet mask. This network is connected to 1.1.1.2, that is my ISP. Send any unknown packets to this network which is connected in the ISP. So now if I type show IP route, you can see a default route is created pointing towards ISP. And look at this. If I scroll up, this was the routing table previously before we configured the default network. You can say that gateway of the last resort is not set. It means if a router receives a packet for unknown destination, it doesn't have any gateway to forward the packet. But now look at the difference. Once I configured the IP default network command, it is saying that gateway of the last resort is set to 1.1.1.2. That means if I receive a packet towards unknown destination, I need to send it to this neighbor since this is my default network. So this time my router doesn't have the networks towards 4, 5, 6, but still it should be reachable. If I type ping 4.4.4.4, pretty good. My router now knows that if he receives the packet for unknown destination, he needs to send it to ISP. That's the reason your R1 is able to ping to the IP addresses that are connected in the internet. But what about your R2? Let me go on R2. Show IP route. For R2, it is saying that gateway of last resort is not set, plus I cannot see any path or routes defined towards those ISP networks. So this time if I type ping 4.4.4.4, it won't be reachable. So there are two solutions over here. What I can do is on R2, let me get the pen over here. Okay. From R2, what I can do is I can say a default route saying that R2, if you don't know anything, just send a packet to R1 by using a traditional default route command saying that IP route 0.0.0.0, 0.0.0.0, your next hop is R1. And from R3 I can do the same thing. If you don't know anything, go to R2 because R2 has the next hop to R1 and R1 is connected to ISP. Similarly from R4. But problem comes when I have more networks, more routers in my network. Think about the size of the enterprise network where you have 100, 200 routers. So doing this default route on every single router and saying that if you don't know anything, you need to go to your neighbor becomes a tough job. Instead, I have my routing protocol. If you look at this, all are running with Eigrp. So what I can do is I can tell Eigrp that please tell everyone that if they don't know anything, they have to come to R1 since R1 is connected to ISP. And I can do this by advertising this default network in Eigrp. Let me show you. Let me get the console for R1. This is the console for R1. I'll go to global config mode under the routing process, router Eigrp 100. I'll type network 1.0.0.0. Now let me get back to my R3 router. So now in R3 router, if I type show IP, where's the console? Here it is. Okay, so this is the console for R3. Show IP route. This time you will find that it also has a Eigrp default route, and R3 is saying that if I don't know anything, I need to send the packet to 10.1.3.2, that is my R2 router. Since these are the IGP protocols, they work hop by hop. If this router doesn't know anything, he is going to send the packet to R2. If R2 doesn't know anything, he is going to send the packet for R3. If you had one more router connected over here, let's define it as R5. So even in R5, it will say that if I don't know anything, I have to send a packet to R3. R3, if I don't know anything, he'll send the packet to R2. R2 will send it to R1, and R1 has this as a default route. So this time it means that R3 will be able to ping to the networks that are connected in ISP. Ping 4.4.4.4. Pretty good enough. We are getting a reply. Hope you have understood the concept. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.